Paso terrorist, the Dayton, Ohio terrorists.
Have you ever heard about human zoos?
Human zoos?
Uh-huh.
When you check out their DNA, they might be even more Mexican than the Mexican.
Exactly. A recent issue, you can say that Hajj is that national exercise to uproot racism.
And in his manifesto, he called them invaders, and he was actually praising the Christchurch killer who killed, 50 some innocent human beings.
And he was comparing the human race to a garden. That yes, it has different colors, but that adds to the beauty of it.
To go ahead and give someone $100,000 that they can bring you anywhere where Jesus said, "I'm God, worship me," would you give him $100,000?
I would do so. Yep.
Yeah. They connect him somehow to Islam. Bam! It's the label terrorist, radical Islam. They bring it in.
And even in America, in 1920s till 1970s, there were a lot of state-run eugenics.
With Islam, that Islam is a solution to the race problem. We actually worship the Kaaba or the black stone, you can end up in the hellfire.
You're out of Islam.
You're out of Islam.
Exactly.
So that kills that argument. You need blood sacrifice?
No need for that. No.
None of that. Original goodness now.
Exactly.
And is it true now at the end that you're like a newborn baby, free of sin? Brothers in humanity, to show that you have more in line with the Eid, actually, the victory of pure monotheism.
Exactly. So
this is the TheDeenShow.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, assalamu alaikum, greetings of peace. And for those people who are watching the people on the TV, they're excited. Maybe they missed this year of going to Arafat, or they're there already. And now some people are confused and what's the wisdoms behind it. Well, we got Imam Arafat here in the studio, and we're going to be talking about the road to Mecca, Hajj as a spiritual journey. Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh.
Wa alaikum assalam.
How are you?
Good, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah, it's good to have you on the program. So
Thank you.
some people are going to be on Arafat. Your name is Arafat.
Yes, correct.
How did you get that name now, Arafat? Because that's tell us what Arafat is actually.
The word Arafat is the name of the valley where, at least nowadays, around 2 million people will be staying in.
2 million?
In the season of Hajj. 2 million people who would be dedicating their time only for asking God for forgiveness. And that makes the scene looks like the Day of Judgment. So that is the climax of the Hajj experience.
So you're an imam. You're also someone you finished from the Islamic University of, was it Azhar?
Yes, I got my bachelor's degree from Al-Azhar University, and then my master's from the Divinity School of the University of Chicago. And right now I am working on my dissertation in the University of Chicago.
For your PhD?
Yes.
Oh, mashallah. Hajj, fifth pillar of Islam. One is to testify that there's nothing worthy of worship except the creator of the heavens and earth. There's no God but the one God, Allah. Muhammad is the messenger. This will automatically include all the other messengers who came with the same message. Worshipping one God alone. Prayer, establishing that direct connection with your creator 5 times a day minimum. Fasting during the month of Ramadan. Giving the poor due tax, the charity. But specifically now we're talking about the pilgrimage. People make pilgrimage to Europe, to Disney World, this world, that world. But we're talking about the pilgrimage to Mecca. Some people can't make sense of it. We want to derive some wisdoms for it.
Yeah, even, thank you for the invitation. Even for some Muslims, they struggle with the idea of making sense of Hajj itself. Even you could see that in some classical works, that God commanded us to do things that we can understand, like charity, like prayers, and we obeyed. And he wanted to see if we would obey when he command us to do something that we do not understand. And they mentioned the example of Hajj. And this is absolutely incorrect, because Hajj is very, very meaningful. And to understand where Hajj is situated in the spiritual practices of Islam, you need to get to the roots of Muslim spirituality. Islamic spirituality is deeply rooted in knowing God. And when we know God, there are few things that if we reflected on, it will lead to all of these spiritual practices that we engage in. So if we know God as the real existent, it will lead to that sense of detachment and engagement. What I mean by these 3 words, real existent, is that like me and you 100 years ago were not here, and in 100 years will not be here. So what kind of existence this is? The real one who exists is the everlasting, the eternal, and that is only God. So that is the core of Muslim spirituality. If, for example, it basically means that a Muslim does not allow himself or herself to be consumed by the materialism outside. Why would you allow yourself to be distracted by the temporary from the eternal? That is why the spiritual system in Islam is understood from that perspective. When we understand God is the real existence, we detach ourselves for a while from the dunya, and we engage in the acts of worship. So in salah and dhikr, we detach from the world and we engage in dhikr. In fasting, we detach from desires of eating and drinking for a while, and we engage in more connection with God. In zakah, we detach from parts of our money and we engage in helping the poor and the needy. And now the climax of that detachment and engagement comes with Hajj.
That's the climax now.
Exactly.
That's the top of the top now.
So that some people cannot make sense of it. Now this is the climax of Muslim spirituality. When you understand it under the idea of engagement, detachment and engagement.
Did all the prophets that Allah sent to guide humanity out of His love, did they all make this pilgrimage to Hajj?
Yeah, many prophets did it to Hajj, did the Hajj, and yes, because again, it's not necessarily the Kaaba, but it's this central idea of detaching yourself from your community, your society, your country, and you're heading for a different place, for a sacred place where you dedicate weeks or months for absolute worship.
So you're answering the call. Labbaik Allahumma labbaik, labbaik
Exactly.
Allah. So I'm here. You're saying here. I'm here at your service, my Lord. How would you translate that?
Yeah, labbaika Allahumma labbaik means, oh Lord, I come answering your call. So, and again, this is the climax. We answer God's call in the 5 daily prayers, but that is an easy answer. But now this answer for Hajj requires that you leave your country, your money, your family, and everything behind.
You answered her call, his call, the boss's call, the president's call, this call. Now you're answering your Creator's call.
Exactly.
Allah the Almighty.
So this is one way of making sense of Hajj. Another way is knowing God. We know God through His attributes.
I like what you have here. Is, knowing, when you know your Creator, you have that yearning feeling to meet your Creator. And so continue on there. And it's Hajj is that yearning to go ahead and answer the call and to get as close as you can to your Creator, knowing that by obeying Him, living the life that He wants you to live, you're going to actually get to see Him in the next life.
Yeah, I think I want to place more emphasis on the idea of going back to the roots of Muslim spirituality.
Yeah.
If you really want to understand what Hajj is for. So if you know God as the real existent, you will understand that Hajj is the culmination of detachment and engagement. And if you get to know the attributes of God, like, you will develop that love for God. Because as scholars say, why do we love anybody? We love anybody because of the attributes of beauty, majesty, and holiness. These are the 3 reasons why we love anyone. Beauty does not necessarily mean physical beauty, but doing good to you is one aspect of beauty. We love people because of their majestic qualities, like absolute knowledge, like great knowledge, great power. We love to associate ourselves with those people. Someone who's holy, someone who's perfect. Now, God is the author of all of these qualities. So if you love people because of beauty, majesty, and power and holiness, why don't you develop that love for God? And He is the source of all of these types of qualities that makes you love God. So this is another foundation for Muslim spirituality. When you know God in this way, you develop that love, and that love would generate shawq and yearning for God. And actually, the Prophet prayed for this spiritual state of yearning for God. He says, Allahumma inni as'aluka shawqa ila liqa'ik. I ask you to let me experience this yearning for you. من غير ضراء مضرة ولا فتنة مضلة. Basically, without this shawq, this passionate yearning, I love to have it, without it being stimulated by a trial or a tribulation. Because some people could want to leave and meet God because of the problems they having. But the Prophet is asking for yearning that is absolutely for who God is.
Mm-hmm.
So that yearning for God needs to be quenched. And Hajj is a chance for quenching our yearning of God. And you can easily ask, what is in Hajj that would quench our yearning for God? And all of the steps of Hajj would really help us do that. For Allah made Hajj consists of sha'air. Sha'air means signs. Sha'air means signs. And one of these is the Kaaba. So the Kaaba is one way of quenching our yearning for God. Walking between Safa and Marwa, the Arafat, and throwing the pebbles. These are signs and reminders of God, to experience God. Yeah. So we can talk about these four.
So once you, because in Islam we know that there's it's not blind faith, that you use the faculties that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the creator of the heavens and earth, gave you to determine if is this Quran from him, from the creator, is the Prophet Muhammad a messenger from Allah. Now after you determine that based on evidence and proof and authenticity, now you submit yourself. And now someone can be like trying to make sense of all this, but do they need to go back to the basics? Because once now, if they're going to be questioning everything, like, okay, it's good to know, like, okay, Allah said don't drink, we don't drink, but now we see that every 10 seconds someone's dying from alcohol. Oh, now we can understand. This is out of Allah's love. He pushed away this harm. So now we want to know, specifically for Hajj, we want to derive the wisdoms, but not necessarily like if someone is like having a crisis of faith and they don't want to submit because they can't understand it. Is that the wrong mindset?
It's, I think, as I said in the beginning, the reason why people may not understand it is because they are missing the foundation.
So we're going back to the foundation. So the foundation has to be strong.
Yes. So if someone is having doubts because he does not understand why it is 7, not 5, I mean, if it is 3, you would ask the same question.
Exactly, yeah.
But we can talk about the practice itself. This is what we can question.
So now we're trying to determine and sometimes knowing these, you submit lovingly, willingly, obediently, but now you get to learn one of the wisdoms and you're just like, wow, because the companions of the Prophet ﷺ at that time, they didn't know many of these scientific discoveries that we know today. They just submitted. But now if you can break down, is there any significance to so you're talking about detachment, that's one thing, but now when you're at the Kaaba, is there any significance with the number of times, or with the black stone, or with Safa Marwa? Can you talk about is there anything that we learn of the wisdoms?
Yeah, the valid question when it comes to searching for the wisdom, when it comes to the Kaaba, is to ask, why is the Kaaba? Why do we do that circling around the Kaaba? Are we worshipping the Kaaba? So this is but to ask about why is it 7 times, not 5, I think this is not
irrelevant. So why the Kaaba?
Why the Kaaba? The Kaaba in the Quran and in our tradition is considered to be, as I said, God wants to quench people's yearning. So the Kaaba is that symbol for the work of God. God called it my house. So in the Quran it says, we entrusted Abraham and Ishmael, saying, Tahir baytiya, purify my house. Ibn al-Qayyim says it is that association which makes people have that yearning for God. So that is a symbol for what? For God himself. The idea of the Kaaba is the first house of God, and this is something that quenched your yearning for God. And it is also the place where God answered Abraham and Ishmael's prayers to send the last prophet. So we honor this place because it marked the fulfillment of the dua of Ibrahim and Ismail.
So what are the next steps? Okay, so the person, when they get to the Hajj, they do the tawaf?
So they do the tawaf, and then after that they do 2 rak'ahs, drink from Zamzam, and then they do the sa'i between Safa and Marwa.
Okay.
And if we're honoring Tawheed and monotheism, and when we go around the Kaaba, and by the way, this is also a place that marks the victory of monotheism over polytheism.
That's a deep statement right there.
Exactly.
So the victory, honoring the victory of monotheism over polytheism.
Because one time, at the time of the Prophet, we had around 360 idols around the Kaaba. Now, with the mission of the Prophet completed, no idols around the Kaaba. So we love this place because it is symbolic for that victory of Tawheed itself and monotheism.
Mhm.
So we worship God inside the Kaaba, like you can pray Sunnah there, and out and around the Kaaba. So it is a place where you worship Allah there.
No worshiping the Kaaba
Not
itself.
worshiping the place.
It's unfortunate.
It's like a mosque. It's like
Yeah.
a masjid.
Yeah.
But we honor it because it is the ancient mosque, and as I said, it marked the fulfillment of the dua of Ibrahim
Yeah.
and Ismail.
A lot of Islamophobes and other people who are just like victims of it, victims of the Islamophobia, and then they get a lot of misinformation out there, and people use this as a way to go ahead and mislead people, and they say, no, what kind of monotheism when you guys are worshiping not the Kaaba in this case, some people say the Kaaba, but the black stone. What do you say to that?
Now, again, we're going around the Kaaba and we're saying labbaik Allahumma labbaik. We're communicating with God, saying, "Oh God, we come to you, answering your call." We're not addressing the Kaaba in any way.
Mm-hmm.
But again, as I said, these are sha'air, these are symbols
Yeah.
for experiencing the love of God. The black stone is another symbol, and it is even in a hadith it says it symbolizes the right hand of God. So when you touch it, it's as if you're entering the palace of a king, and you're making that commitment and you're making that relationship with God. It is symbolic for that.
Yeah. Didn't Umar radiallahu anh, he went, and as he kissed it, what did he say?
Yeah, he says, "I know that you do not harm or benefit."
You
And
cannot harm or benefit.
Exactly. It's not we're worshiping. It has nothing to do with
He
that.
said, I'm just doing it because
The Prophet did it before me, and I am copying the Prophet.
but I'm not worshiping you.
It has nothing to do with
The-
worshiping the Kaaba.
If you actually worship the Kaaba or the black stone, you can end up in the hellfire.
You're out of Islam.
You're out of
basically.
Islam.
Exactly.
So that kills that argument.
Mhm.
Continue on this concept of
So we're honoring monotheism
Yeah.
in the form of, in the symbol of the Kaaba, because this is the word the Quran used, sha'ira, which is like sign or alama. Between sa'i between Safa and Marwa, walking between Safa and Marwa, this is around 400 meters between Safa and Marwa, and here we're celebrating the heart of a lady.
the
This
heart
is-
of a lady, huh?
Exactly. This is Hajar. She was originally was looking for water for her baby Ishmael at
Yeah.
that time, and she couldn't find water, and she did 7 rounds between Safa and Marwa
Yeah.
till she find the water.
Isn't that a miracle right there? So there's two things. You're talking about championing a woman, right? That dispels a myth like Islam oppresses women, all this other nonsense out there. That anybody with any 2 cents that looks into it see that this is just far from the truth. But now we're imitating in this particular scenario a woman.
Yes, I always say, imagine if a man is looking for water for his son. Would you go 7 times between Safa and Marwa? Or one would be enough and say, I didn't find water.
Yeah.
But she could not believe it. She could not believe that she cannot find water for the thirsty baby. That is why she kept looking, having trust in God. And we're here celebrating trust in God. So we honored monotheism, and here we're honoring one of the fruits of monotheism, which is trusting in God. So this is what, again, it is symbols. You're dedicating your life for, like in our modern time, for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and having that intensive course in spirituality by connecting with God. And then one of the marks and one of the signs also is the Arafah time, the Arafah valley.
So now you finished the tawaf, you came there, you did the Sahwa Marwa, and now you go ahead and now you're going, next step is now, so people can follow along who are new to this, thinking about accepting Islam, thinking about going to Hajj, what they can expect. So the next one is
No, if we're going with order, then you trim the nail. You cut the hair, and then basically you have a break if you're doing tamattu, and then on the 8th day you go to Mina, and on the 9th day you go to Arafah. So we're talking about these major acts. So on Arafah day, this is the most important act of worship during the whole season of
Someone
Hajj.
says why?
Why? Because on Arafah day, you see around 2 million people in one spot,
Wow.
and they have
Subhanallah.
nothing to do but asking God for forgiveness and asking God to draw them closer to Him.
Wow.
So it's like it's as if it is the day of judgment.
Are they praying to any saints, to any dead people in the ground? Are they any intermediate? Are they just praying to the Creator of the heavens and earth?
Exactly, directly.
Just
And
God.
with
Allah.
but with the hope that they will be forgiven.
Yeah.
And that is why scholars say the biggest sin on that time, in that time, is when you leave the Arafat Valley thinking that God did not forgive you.
That's
So-
a big one of the biggest sins, huh?
Exactly.
Disparaging.
Exactly. This is God is the one who you sin against God, and God is the one who forgives.
You need blood sacrifice?
No need for that. No.
None of that. Original goodness now.
Exactly.
And is it true now at the end that you're like a newborn baby, free of sin?
Yes, this is the chance. If you do that sacrifice and you dedicate that time for that journey, you come back as newly born spiritually.
Yeah. Give us some more that you cover on the road to Mecca. Some more of the wisdoms that you think are very powerful that we can benefit from.
I think if we can benefit from this, and not just religiously, but also in our civil life. If you see the scene on Arafat, you see, as I said, 2 million people. All men are dressing in the same way, just two pieces. There is no luxury there. Everyone is equal. You cannot differentiate between the ruler and the ruled,
Deep.
between
That's
the
deep.
rich
Wow.
and the
Strong.
poor, between Arabs and non-Arabs. All differences are absent, and all people are equal. If we become equal in the prayer by putting our forehead on the ground, regardless of your color, race, nationality, or language, again, the climax of that equality is in Hajj. That is why it affected Malcolm X so much when he did his Hajj. I think it was in 1964 when he wrote that famous letter. And he believed that there is hope in America when he saw this season of Hajj, and he said, I was welcomed and no one was judging me basically by how I look and by my color. So Hajj experience gave him hope that racism could one day end.
With Islam, that Islam is a solution to the race problem. We're seeing a lot of it now. We just had. What are your thoughts? Just diverging a little bit, but it's connected to this because in our country here in the America, we just had in El Paso, you had the manifesto of the person's shooter, gunman, but he gunned down, what was it, like 20 human beings. And in his manifesto, he called them invaders, and he was actually praising the Christchurch killer who killed, 50 some innocent human beings
That's
in the
very
mosque.
sad.
Yeah, and this is based on what this is the original sin. Is that correct, Shay? That racism, that I'm better, right? I'm better than this person. I'm better than he or she, that him, my color of my skin, nationality. So he went and gunned down these people because of his racist supremacy, what they call it, white supremacy or whatnot.
So based on this recent issue, you can say that Hajj is that national exercise to uproot racism.
This is what America needs.
Exactly. This is national exercise because you have people from all parts of the world coming from one place, dressing the same, invoking the same God. There are no signs of differences between them.
So you'll come like Malcolm X. He saw the yellow man, Chinese man, the redneck, whatever you want to call it, all different shapes and sizes and colors, rich, poor. We need to get Donald Trump and some other people to do Hajj, huh? And the visa,
or at least watch.
or at least watch.
Yeah, or appreciate that gathering that does not differentiate.
And there is hope for everyone, Shay. Because look, the visa, you have to go through hoops and measures and everything. I mean, they put you through all sorts of restrictions to get a visa. I mean, Over there, it's a pretty simple visa. Just declare what's in your nature, that there's nothing worthy of worship except the creator of the heavens and earth.
Mhm.
And Muhammad
we,
is,
and we all go back to the same Adam and Eve.
And
This
that's
is
it.
also something
and that's
that
how you get into the Hajj, right? Say the Shahada and then accept it, understand it. It's not, don't suppress like your fitra, your innate nature. And then this is then you had another one, 24 hours later, you had the Dayton shooter. You know, you heard about him, right? Not even 24 hours later, another racist went down and gunned down another, what was it, like 9 people or something? They need to get the Hajj. They need to accept it. They need to look into Islam.
Yeah, there is actually a very sad history of racism. Even scientifically, the idea of the white being superior species. Did you hear about Otabinga?
Please share that with us.
This is a very sad history in the West. Have you ever heard about human zoos?
Human zoos?
Uh-huh.
No, I haven't.
So,
Human zoos.
Uh-huh. This is really when racism had that scientific justification. So Otabinga, and you can easily search him, Otabinga was a pygmy from Congo, and he was brought by an African missionary. He's an American business and African missionary. He was brought to the U.S. because he found out that his 4 feet and 2 inches tall with pointed teeth. So he thought that this is a good and black man, and this is a good example to illustrate evolution. And he was caged in a zoo. Otabinga was caged in a zoo. And when he was, I think, 32 years, he took his life because of some depression he was going through. So there is really sad, and even in America in 1920s till 1970s, there were a lot of state-run eugenics.
Wow.
That applied mandatory sterilization that targeted 60,000 Americans. Most of them are black African Americans, and some children who are coming from poor families. That is our history. It is only, I think, in 2014, New Carolina was the first state to compensate the victims, the alive victims of this practice. And they gave them $20,000 as a first payment for that. So we really have, this is a deeply rooted problem. To deal with this, it has to be uprooted from grounds. It has to be uprooted. And you have to admit that you're worshiping one God, and that liberates everybody. And you have to believe certainly and firmly that you're coming from the same Adam and Eve. So these two, if these two are not firm in our beliefs, there will be no change.
Can you go back? And actually, they did tests on this when they checked people's lineage with was it with the DNA?
Mm-hmm.
And then so the person, there's no someone purely European.
Exactly. You could be having your roots in Africa.
Exactly.
And you're having green.
So the El Paso the El Paso terrorist, the Dayton Ohio terrorists. These people, they are going and killing Mexicans and trying to kill Muslims and other African Americans. They might have, when you check out their DNA, they might be even more Mexican than the Mexican.
Exactly. That is scientifically
That's
true.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but what do you think about this, just to go off and we'll come back to Hajj, what do you think about this when as soon as somebody is connected to somehow being a Muslim, even though he doesn't pray, doesn't fast, doesn't go to Hajj, maybe has like a Muslim, somewhat, an Arabic name, Muslim name, and now maybe they connect him somehow to Islam, bam, it's the label terrorist, radical Islam, they bring it in. Mm-hmm. But a lot of times, like in these people, shooter, gunmen, no name terrorists in front of it. They don't use it. What have you?
Yeah, and no religious identity.
No religious identity. They don't connect him with a religion. I'm sure. I'm 100%. You can connect. 99% that you can connect them, and we don't blame Christianity or anything. But you can, if you wanted to make a case, you can probably see that his parents went to church or his grandparents. You can somehow connect him to be a Christian, but we don't blame Christianity. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it seems that there is deliberate intention to do so, but it have been so obvious that many people are noticing it.
It's so overt, yeah.
Yeah, people are noticing it. Even you would see non-Muslim commenting on the same exact observation.
Yeah, that's a good thing. You see, you have a lot of non-Muslims, not yet Muslims, who are out there now speaking about these double standards. That's
Exactly.
yeah. So back to Hajj now. So we went off here giving a live example of the racism that's happening now, and it's leading to this terrorism that's happening in our home here, in our backyard, and Hajj being what you were saying, the eradication. Give an example of Malcolm X to uproot that racism through Hajj.
There
through
is
Islam.
one verse in the Quran that really, it's something that every human being would be proud of, and this is the verse saying, "Ya ayyuhan nas, inna khalaqnakum min dhakarin wa untha." O people, we created you from a male and female. وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ لِتَعَارَفُوا. And we made you peoples and tribes so that you get to recognize each other. إِنَّ أَكْرَمَكُمْ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ أَتْقَاكُمْ. The most honorable among you are the more who have more piety, more righteousness. So this is again equating between all people. Imam al-Sayyadi has a book called about the unity of the human race. And he was comparing the human race to a garden. That yes, it has different colors, but that adds to the beauty of it. So, and he's talking about the different levels of being relative. One part is the Adam relation, and it is interesting that the word human being in Arabic could be translated in Arabic to Adami, which means related to Adam. So a human being is someone who's related to Adam.
Yeah.
So, in the Muslim tradition, you have that deeply rooted. Someone was making a funny note on when Obama won the American election, and people were celebrating this idea that we have a black president. And he said, I looked into the Egyptian history, and I found out that Sadat was black, and no one noticed it. No one noticed that he's black, and because the problem does not exist itself, the problem itself is not there. So it's not about white president or black president. That was never been a discussion. It has never been a question or something to wonder about.
Yeah.
But he said, as I was reviewing the picture, I said, he's coming from Upper Egypt. He looks black. So we had a black president before, but it's out of question. It's not there. It's irrelevant. And this is the power of Islam. This is the power of surrendering to the one God, and the power of recognizing your original roots in Adam and Hawa and Eve.
Because we're all brothers. We can say we're all brothers in humanity.
Exactly. That is one level, the Adam relation.
Yeah. So we covered the Arafat. All day, making dua, supplication, and what goes on from there after that?
One major sign that connects people with God is the jamarat, which is throwing the pebbles. You throw it against a big pillar, and this symbolizes your declaration that you're taking the devil as your enemy. So if you're saying labbaik Allahumma labbaik, oh God, I come to you, answering your call, now you're taking it to the next level and taking the devil as your enemy. So it is an exercise in commitment. And during the whole season of Hajj, it's always done with dhikr and remembrance of God, and praise of God penetrates through all of the acts of Hajj. And this is the problem with people who cannot make sense of Hajj is that they look at the rituals themselves and they forget the roots, they forget the foundations, and they forget what is done in the Hajj. It's like someone looking at a Muslim praying thinking that he's doing an exercise. No, it's not an exercise. All of these movements are coupled with words of praise for God and meditation. And same thing with Hajj. When it comes to the tawaf, there are words of praise you're saying Sa'i, there are words of praise. You were saying in Arafah, it's all about prayers and words of praise and so on.
Mm. And then wrapping up, what goes on from there? So you finished Arafat, you do the Jamarat, and what else now? Closing up, what else goes on for the people to get a better visual? What goes next? Was it finished?
Some of the steps are repeated. You do tawaf again, and sometimes you
the
do
Pharaoh
sa'i again.
tawaf.
But these are the major.
That's the major.
These are the major signs that you go through in Hajj and how they connect you with God.
Can we say proudly? I mean, this is again the 6 articles of faith in Islam, the belief in one and only one God. You repeated this so often because that's the core message. The belief in the angels, belief in the books that were revealed to the messengers, the day of judgment, paradise, hellfire, and the qadr, the predestiny. God is all-knowing of everything, not ignorant of anything. This is the belief. This is the belief system of Islam. This is the same belief system of Jesus, Moses, Abraham. All of these, they carry that same core. The laws had changed, some specifics, but this is the same core message.
Yes, because the unity of God leads to the unity of the message. If you believe in one universal God, that should lead to a universal message.
Yeah.
Because that message is about who God is, what is life, what is the afterlife, and these things are not subject to change.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Some people now. Okay, so then you have the Qurbani. Can you talk a little bit about that and say some people who have a misunderstanding say, you see, you guys are sacrificing now. Look, we have the sacrifice of Jesus. You have sacrificed animals. The pagans used to do that to their gods. And you've heard this?
Yeah, you did.
Okay. How do you address this?
It's very simple. We're doing this to feed the poor and the needy. And when you help people in need, you get closer to God. It has nothing to do with getting your sins forgiven, because we do not believe in the original sin. And for Jesus to die for you, that is very theologically problematic, because in Christian theology, for that sacrifice to make sense, God has to die. If it is a human or animal sacrifice, it doesn't count. So can God die?
No.
So this is the big problem. It's not as easy as people think. So when they are talking about Jesus as perfect sacrifice, that perfect sacrifice has to be God, or at least God-man, but still it has God in it. And no one could understand this idea that God is being crucified for people's sins.
Would you put up 100,000 right now to say if anybody can bring you, again, this is out of the love we do it, to have people to think, delivering this pure message of monotheism, to go ahead and give someone $100,000 that they can bring you anywhere where Jesus said, "I'm God, worship me"? Would you give them 100,000?
I would do so. Yep.
Yeah.
Because many Christians admit that this idea does not occur in the Bible itself. The idea of "I am God, worship me" is not there.
It's nowhere there. Clear, unequivocal statement where Jesus ever said that "I am God, worship me."
And again, when it comes to some verses that many Christian brothers would interpret as leading to the divinity of Jesus, I would advise them to understand these terms in the way the Jews did, because you would have things like in some translation, and they worshipped Jesus. But the idea of worship Jesus is also worship that you would find equivalent terms in the Old Testament, and it's not about worship like worshiping God.
Yes.
This is a sign of respect.
Sign of respect, yes.
So you see all of these interpretations, but if you read the New Testament with Jewish lens, you will not reach the Christian theological conclusion.
Yeah, not to go off topic, but yeah, you're 100%. So you got a $100,000 challenge. If someone can show where Jesus, in any authentic statement, said that "I am God, worship me," you got 100,000 coming from Imam Arafat. But you see in clear verses where he's he's subordinate to God, that he's calling people, saying he's sent by God, calling the people to only worship the one God, that he wasn't all-knowing, God is all-knowing, that he was born, allegedly they say he died, God's not born, doesn't die. This is common sense, but it's a shame that common sense isn't always common practice. So this is very clear. So wrapping up, I wanted to just touch upon a couple more things. So we kind of clearly, just in this summary of Hajj, we covered, so many beautiful wisdoms. One thing that comes to mind is because we have as an ultimate proof the Quran, its authenticity, the signs that are in there. the prophecies. I mean, just a believable message. Then just looking at the life of Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, examining his life. No one who's sincere, humble, genuine would walk away thinking otherwise than what he called people to believe in this message, that he was anything else than what Allah claimed he was and what he claimed to be. Genuine and sincere, you have to be that. Now, along with other signs, one of them, because we're talking about Hajj, can you comment on Zamzam? When Hajj, when she went back and forth, now you have this water that sprung, the Zamzam, and to this day, it's still springing, still gushing. And then you also had a Chinese scientist who actually examined this water. Have you read on that? And how he differentiated, this water from other water. They did tests on it. Can you comment on the Zamzam?
No, I did not read about the Chinese research.
We're going to put something that they can look at. I'll put something up.
Good. But the idea that this Zamzam is still running for 14 centuries is a great miracle that we witness. Yeah.
That's amazing. Didn't the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, talked about it being a cure or of some sort also?
Yeah, it's there is also in our tradition there is evidence that this is a blessed water that could heal based on your intention.
Yeah.
We believe that the one who heals is God, but God put some means to reach that healing. And there are many people who reports improvement. So this is kind of a
shifa he can give through here.
Shifa.
How would you translate shifa?
Healing.
A healing.
I mean, there is personal witness to this, personal experience from people who got healed through Zamzam, who got their prayer answered during the Arafah.
Yeah.
They never had children for years. I know someone who's really.
So you know life stories. I know some
exactly,
also. Yeah.
Someone who's really known to me, and he never has had kids for decades.
Tell us about that.
And then he went that day and he made that dua, and then he called his wife by the end of the Hajj season, and she gave him the good news that she's pregnant.
Allahu Akbar.
And it's really amazing.
Yeah.
No.
I know a true story of a Muslim in Bosnia, and they wrote about him that he was written off by the doctors. He had a stage 4 tumor, and he was pretty much written off that he had several weeks to live. Someone brought him the hadith of Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, the authentic hadith about the Zamzam, and he went down to Umrah, and he just was drinking the Zamzam, making dua, Zamzam, and he came back, did the test, and he was cured.
Mm-hmm.
So
we should also understand that we're not testing God.
Yeah.
So if someone did this and he does not see results, it does not mean there is a problem in this, because it's like the dates. There are some ahadith about the dates too, but it's putting your trust in God through that means. And God is the one who answered the prayers, and it could be answered immediately, it could be answered in a year, it could be answered, it will be answered in God's way. So we cannot also use it to test God's answering of our prayers.
That's a real important point. Isn't there a verse, since we were talking about in our closing up of the sacrifice, that the food goes to the poor? It's not. Isn't there an ayah in the Quran where Allah is saying that it's not the blood that reaches Allah, but it's the
piety. It is the taqwa.
Yeah.
So again, this is another point that goes back to your question about original sin. It's more about these acts are more to show support for people that is done sincerely for the sake of God, not for showing off.
Yeah. What's your opinion now? Should you keep in that tradition? Some people now that are here in the States, they say, well, there's poor people in Ethiopia, Bosnia, whatever the case. I'm just going to send money. Can they send money and still keep that tradition alive? What is it to actually physically do the qurbani here? Some people say, why should I do it here? There's no poor people for me to give. How do you answer that question?
There are poor people in America. If they do not know that, they should check.
How does it work? 1/3, 1/3, 1/3?
Yes, this is the sunnah, but it does not it has to be 3 parts. It doesn't have to be equal.
Yeah.
So you can have 2 pounds for yourself, and this is your part.
Yeah.
and the rest is for your friends and for the needy families. So it does not have
It's
to
not
be
restricted to this is the sunnah, but is
it is sunnah, but what I am saying, it does not have to be 1/3, 1/3, 1/3.
yeah.
But it can be one part, 3 parts.
Yeah.
It does not have to be equal parts.
Okay.
So this is again to give more chance for poor people to benefit from the sacrifice. They can do it here. They can do it in a country that they think they need it the most.
Yeah.
But to exclude the place you're living in is not the right option to do.
Yeah.
Because there are needy families, and we
Yeah.
have many mosques that has food pantries, and they are serving hundreds and hundreds of families, Muslims and non-Muslims.
Yeah.
But if they feel that there is more need in some countries, yes, they can
Yeah.
transfer the udhiyah to them.
Yeah. Is there a great blessing and reward for keeping this legacy alive, for actually going through the process?
Definitely. Actually, the problem that people tend to compare others with our life. There are people who cannot find meat or food, meat for months. So this is not luxury to them.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, this is a way of feeding people.
Yeah. Just Eid now. So you have Eid. After this now, it's time for the celebration. Talk to us a little bit about the Eid.
It's interesting that Eid is, when it comes to Eid, if you look, when it comes to Eid, it's very interesting to consider the timing. We do not have Eid because of Hijrah, because of a victory in a battle. And these are usually nations would pick their days of Eid around political achievements and national victories. But in Islam, our Eid is connected with your personal spiritual growth. After you finish Ramadan, you have a celebration. After you finish Hajj, you have a celebration. And it's interesting to notice that this celebration is run by the remembrance and the dhikr of God. So Eid is a reminder that any day you get closer to God, any day you get closer to serving humans, is a day of celebration for you.
Yeah. This is interesting because you have a lot of Muslims who will forsake some of these, some of the Eids and some of the monotheistic traditions, and they'll wish someone Merry Christmas, and they'll get into some of these things that, with all due respect, you have more in line for the Christian really following Jesus, like you mentioned, to celebrate the victory of monotheism with the Eid, the other Eid with the victory of Ibrahim alayhi salam, Abraham, willingness to sacrifice his son. So that's more in line with the true Christianity, right? But this concept of Jesus dying for your sins, and this goes in line with associating partners with God, with shirk, and then they'll fall into these, get a Christmas tree and do things that even the Bible doesn't sanction, calls people who do this pagans and other derogatory things. And this is just a point of educating our brothers in humanity to show that you have more in line with the Eid, actually, the victory of pure monotheism.
Exactly. So that is true. That's obviously true. And also, I take this chance.
Do you see that? Do you see that? I mean, you're an imam, you're a leader in the community. You see a lot of these things going on?
Yeah, I see some of these practices that some Muslims would fall into, and it does not make sense even to some Christians.
Yeah.
Some Christians do not celebrate it in this way.
Many are against that materialism, against we're doing these things. If you look too, they have pagan roots.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Even we're talking about pagan. Even the word God, because some people say Allah, they think that Allah is like the moon god. No, but Allah is a perfect word for God, because the word Allah does not have plural form. It's Allah. You cannot say in Arabic Allah's. It's the one absolute God.
Yes.
This is what it means in Arabic. So it's absolutely monotheistic. The word God could be gods. It could have plural form. The word God has its pagan roots. It does not come from the word good. Same thing here when it comes to looking at the roots. Islam is really deeply rooted in these great meanings.
Yeah. Islam, ISLAM. Islam says love all mankind. That's why we're sharing this message for all of our brothers and sisters in humanity. You got to learn a little bit about the Hajj, that deep victory over polytheism, the victory of monotheism, pure monotheism. And if you love your Creator, you love God, you're going to love Islam. And we cleared up some of those misconceptions, talked about the fifth pillar of Islam, the Hajj. I want to thank you so much
No problem.
for sharing some of those wisdoms with us. And we wish everybody a blessed Eid.
Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Sheikh.
No problem. Thank you.
Jazakallah khair.
Thank you. Jazakallah.
So, and we hope, we wish you guys who are watching this during the Eid and during this blessed time, that you go ahead and continue to tune into the Deen Show, and we're sending our salams, and we give them the Eid Mubarak.
Eid Mubarak.
Eid Mubarak from me and Imam Arafat. And for our brothers and sisters in humanity, if they want to visit you, Sheikh, they can visit you at your masjid. Is the door open? Or we always encourage the not yet Muslims to come and learn about Islam.
And they do. We have great relations with non-Muslims, with our Christian neighbors.
Yeah. And if you're in the Chicago area, you can go ahead and visit a mosque or anywhere. Make that human connection, because you have so much negative false propaganda out there, and the only way to eradicate much of this fear and ignorance is through education. That's what we're humbly trying to do, educate you on this beautiful way of life that brings peace, contentment, solace to the hearts. Continue to tune in, subscribe if you haven't already. Leave us your takeaways in the comments below. We'll see you next time, inshallah, God willing, here on The Deen Show. Peace be with you. Assalamu alaikum.